Joe Biden was scheduled to speak, or is scheduled to speak, at Morehouse College. Morehouse is a college that Baba Makaru is an alumni of. And it's interesting to me, before we even get into why he's under pressure, it's just ironic that you have a historically black college full of black men that would even think to invite the very individual who, if he had it his way, the majority of those black men would be locked up and in prison. With his role in the crime bill, you would think that black people would have enough sense to say, this guy should not be allowed to step foot on this campus. Yet the president of Morehouse says we must look at Biden's 50-year track record.
I learned a lot, and I learned that and Corn Pop was a bad dude.
I think the two-party system is good for the South and good for the Negro, good for the black in the South. Other than the fact that they still call me boy, I think they've changed their mind a little bit.
If Haiti just quietly sunk into the Caribbean or rose up 300 feet, it wouldn't matter a whole lot. Is it because blacks are involved in Haiti?
It was old media that got him in trouble. Personal comments he made about another White House hopeful, Senator Barack Obama.
I mean, you got the first sort of mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
Yeah. It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. I would love to see.
Take a look at my record, man. I have a record that is second to none. The NAACP has endorsed me every time I've run. I mean, come on. Take a look at the record.
I like the idea they keep in jail longer. I'm the guy that wrote the bill requiring federal judges to keep people in jail 100% of the time for which they're sentenced. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this? They must be taken off the street. Increase the penalties. Increase them. I would put the son of a gun in jail. Put them to death.
From the crack epidemic of the 80s to the crime wave of the 90s to the post-9/11 war on terror, throughout his career, Biden has represented the Democratic Party consensus, shifting his views to fit whatever best serves his own political career. Over his 44 years in the Senate and then as vice president, Biden was a leading architect of today's criminal justice system, which contributed to mass incarceration and the police misconduct that protesters are fighting back against today.
Biden crime bill, the Biden crime bill, the Biden crime bill. Hell, we've had crime bills coming out our ears. Every major crime bill since 1976, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden. You got a gun? You commit a felony, 10 years. We already have it 5 years. Minimum mandatory. Judge can't say, you know, you had it in your pocket, you never intended to use it, we're only going to give you 1 year. Judge has to say 5 years. Well, he wants to make it 10 or 20 or 60. We can work that out.
He wanted to remove judicial discretion for those who, quote, don't meet the middle-class criteria of susceptibility to rehabilitation.
They are beyond the pale, many of those people. They literally have not been socialized. They are in jail. Away from my mother, your husband, our families.
The Biden-Thurmond Violent Crime Control Act of 1991 would have increased the maximum sentence for 44 crimes to include the death penalty.
A wag in the newspaper recently wrote, Biden has made it a death penalty offense for everything but jaywalking. I'm going to make it for 46 crimes. Biden says make it for 51. We're going to get tough.
Then he presented the final version of the legislation.
60 new death penalties, brand new, 60. There are 70 additional enhancements of penalties, i.e., you go to jail longer.
After his disastrous 1987 presidential campaign, Biden had staged his political comeback, in part by becoming a media darling on issues of policing and crime, and he led the fight to pass the landmark 1994 crime bill under Bill Clinton.
When I wrote the original bill that started this whole process, the so-called Biden crime bill, I didn't call a liberal confab and write it. I didn't call any big society people and write it. I called the cops. A Democratic president wants 100,000 cops. A Democratic president wants to build 125,000 new prison cells. That's the secret.
When Biden ran for president in 2008, he told the New York Times that he knew more people would be locked up across the board.
You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. In fact, I drafted the bill. We had enormous success.
The mass incarceration created by Biden's lock-em-up policies ripped apart vulnerable communities and families for a generation, and the federal funding streams and law enforcement infrastructure it created continue to hinder reform efforts.
I'll do my job and I will take responsibility.
You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all.
Here's as President Joe Biden, support for Israel has resulted in calls to scrap the president's planned commencement speech at Morehouse College. Morehouse, a historically black college that counts civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. among its alumni, announced earlier this week that the president would travel to the Atlanta campus to deliver the keynote address during the graduation ceremony on May 19th. Morehouse President David Thomas said in a statement that the college was excited to host Biden, maintaining that his presence serves as a reminder of our institution's enduring legacy and impact and continued commitment to excellence, progress, and positive change. Progress and positive change. Goes on to say that with this year's presidential election only about 6 months away, polls have suggested that Biden is losing support among black voters, particularly in Georgia, putting him at risk of losing the peach state to former President Donald Trump. Biden won the state by fewer than 15,000 votes in 2020. Now, many of the people who are protesting this are using examples of Dr. King being someone who stood for nonviolence and who was vehemently against the Vietnam War as a stance to say, why would Morehouse, who upholds or uplifts the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., invite someone like Biden in who has failed to stop Israel from its genocide campaign that it has been carrying out on the Palestinians. At the same time, as we just discussed, continuously funding the war in Ukraine. These are two wars who I believe, especially the war in Gaza, but I believe that Dr. King will be against both wars because he knew that war was a money-making machine that enriched the rich and negatively affected the poor. Biden, who is, in my opinion, even too senile to deliver a speech that would even motivate graduating students from a university, only is looking to speak at Morehouse so that he can add it to his resume on the campaign trail to try to secure more votes. And Morehouse, more than likely, even though they're probably paying Joe Biden to speak, they're also looking at the potential financial benefit that could come from hosting the president of the United States or whatever type of resources from the federal government that they would be in fear of losing if they rescinded the president's invitation to speak at the school. But once again, it just shows me that, we try to count on our institutions. What's the purpose of having an institution if you are afraid to stand up for what the majority of the people who represent your institution believe in? What's the purpose of having a quote unquote institution that you control and operate if you don't have the courage to fight for something that represents oppression, exploitation, and genocide, when you come from a people who have been historically oppressed, exploited, and killed and murdered, and had genocide committed on you? It really strikes me as either A, there are too many non-Black influencers over the decision-making processes at Morehouse and other institutions, or B, we as Black people have now devolved or degenerated down to the level of the people who oppressed us and kept us in captivity for so many years. Now we have taken on their personality and we are carrying out their agendas just as if, we were one of them.
Yeah, the school invited Biden in September 2023. They extended the invitation to him to be their commencement speaker in May of 2024. So the invitation was extended before the escalation of hostilities in Palestine with the October 7th attacks by the Hamas organization. And the administration kept this news quiet until I think it was sometime last week or week before last when they made a public announcement that Biden would be the commencement speaker on May 19th. So they have been the administration, President David Thomas and the administration have been watching genocide unfold in Gaza now for what, going on 7 months, right? And they just sat there and watched it. Now, perhaps they were hoping that somewhere along the lines there would be a ceasefire, somewhere along the lines maybe the war would end, but they did nothing. It was like, okay, we've invited the president of the United States, who actually is just the chief executive of the American empire. That's really what the title should be. And we can't just say you're uninvited. I mean, they have seen this. I mean, this is not like, when a war is being fought and you hear about, what happened in Fallujah or what happened in, the highlands of Vietnam. This is right in front of you. It's playing out right in front of you. You see the results. You see all of the bodies of all these children, lined up, in white sheets. And so they watched that. The International Court of Justice gave them an out. They could have, as soon as that ruling was handed down, they could have said, we can't go through with this because of what it of what it represents, of what it means for our institution, to be associated with these acts of genocide that are taking place in the world, killing and taking place in Gaza, killing overwhelmingly women and children and other innocent people. I mean, mass graves recently found at a hospital. Some people with their hands tied behind their backs, naked, killed, by these barbaric Zionists. But they sat there quiet, hoping that the reaction would be quiet, or else, maybe the war would end. But no, they didn't do any of that. So now they're faced with a backlash, because you have students, you have faculty, you have alumni who are all up in arms, calling for, this invitation, to be withdrawn. There's a group, let's see, can't remember which group this was, but I'm just going to read it. It may have been, I think it's the alumni, said, in inviting President Biden to campus, the college affirms a cruel standard that complicity in genocide merits no sanction from the institution that produced one of the tyrant advocates for nonviolence in the 20th century. Letter states, emphasizing Dr. King's stance, that war is a hell that diminishes humanity as a whole. If the college cannot affirm this noble tradition of justice by rescinding this invitation to President Biden, then the college should reconsider its attachment to Dr. King. Now, that was a statement, from members of the alumni. Okay, you have, because I've seen some criticism online of the Morehouse students, because by and large the protests against the genocidal war in Gaza and for the divestment of universities into anything associated with Israel have not taken place on, up to this point, any HBCU. Now, when the hostilities first broke out, there were protests at some HBCUs. For example, at Spelman, which is just right across the street from Morehouse. But check this. These are statements from two Morehouse students. Anwar Kareem, who's a sophomore and political science major, said that when he found out that the president would speak at graduation, he was utterly disappointed but not surprised. Kareem said that the decision to invite the author of the 1994 crime bill, which introduced the explicit notion of black men as super predators and caused long-lasting damage to the black communities, was not in line with the school's image or conducive to the students' success. Lonnie White, who is a junior who actually launched an online petition, said, to have Biden come here to this campus, to this area, especially during an election year, is definitely pandering. We can't invite anybody else that would actually have an insightful message to the black students. Instead, we have Mr. 1994 crime bill. So these students are suggesting that regardless of the complicity of Biden's complicity in the genocide and in the killing of perhaps up to 20,000 children, they're saying just based on his past history. And I don't know who that quote you read was. It the president who was talking about his 50-year record? Does this man, you the president of a college that just invited somebody to be your commencement speaker? Mm-hmm. And you don't know this man's history? You don't know his involvement in the 1986 crime bill, the 1988 crime bill? I'm talking, this is even before we get to the 1994 crime bill, which added 50 new death penalties. You got the crime bills that took place before that. Things in his crime bill like take away the all of the guys in prison could do calisthenics and work out. Take all of that equipment away. Take away the programs that allowed him to earn college credits while they're in prison. All of this is in new Jim Crow Joe's crime bill. The reason why I call him new Jim Crow Joe is because Michelle Alexander clearly called him out in her book, The New Jim Crow. So these students are saying this guy never should have been invited in the first place. But now you've thrown, fuel on the fire. And so Aaron Douglas, who's a political science professor, said, I've spoken with several faculty members who say under no condition that they're going to sit on stage with Joe Biden. So if this guy, now he's arrogant, he's asinine, right? He's mentally, he's mentally challenged. If he doesn't have the decency to cancel himself, then I hope that when he goes there, that there's a massive walkout. I hope that the faculty who are driven by the mandates of conscience with the students.
And that would be a statement. That would be a statement if the students who graduate that day walked out.
The students, their parents,
mm-hmm.
Everybody that goes, because college graduation, I mean, that's a big deal.
That's a once in a lifetime thing for people, so
for us, particularly for us. And
well,
so
Joe Biden.
Go ahead, brother.
What was I going to say? I was going to say that Joe Biden created all of these stipulations and all of these crime bills, but yet his family is the one committing crimes. Think about the hypocrisy of that. You create all of these crime bills to get black men locked up, take away whatever rights they do have in prison, but yet your son is guilty, in my opinion, of many crimes along with you.
They said the other day that the Republicans had access to his taxes. He took a deduction for the hookers that were providing him service.
Wow.
He deducted this report I heard I might have been on NPR. He deducted the money that he paid these hookers. While this guy was, having some kind of drug-induced freaky sex. And what's the name? Taylor Green, who's clearly off the chain, had naked pictures of him showing the people in the U.S. Congress. This is so this is the guy that created all of these put all of these provisions in his crime bill, and he was clear when he got up in 1990. This is the Biden crime bill, the Biden crime bill, the Biden crime bill. Over and over and over, we're gonna take these predators off the streets. I don't think he used super predators. I think Hillary Clinton may have been the first person to use it, but I know he used the word predators. And so he never should have been invited in the first place. But if he doesn't have, if he's willing to deal with the embarrassment, the potential embarrassment, and he goes, I just hope students, faculty, parents get up and walk out, because, as one of the people said here, I forgot, let me see. He said there's a group that they're part of the Atlanta University Center Consortium. These were the people that went to Ebenezer Church when Reverend Warnock came home to preach a couple of weeks ago, and held a protest in the church while he was up there, trying to preach. It said a small group called the Faculty for Justice in Palestine Georgia, has joined students in calling the administrations into account. In a recent statement calling on Morehouse leadership to rescind the invitation of Biden, a group of leaders wrote, check this, any college or university that gives its commencement stage to President Biden in this moment is endorsing genocide.
Mhm.
Now, this is a statement from faculty members, but not just Morehouse faculty members from the whole Atlanta University Center, Atlanta University, Spelman, Clark, Morris Brown, the whole center. So I just hope that I hope these guys stay the course, and the school is in a bind. They've been over a barrel, and so they are not going to rescind the invitation, but they may have some back channel conversations and say, look, dude, I mean, can you do us a favor? After you get elected, we'll get you back down here for, because they're supposed to be giving them an honorary, I guess a doctorate of laws. You're giving a criminal a doctor of laws, but anyway, that's what's happening.